A couple of days ago, I shared a video with my favorite ways that writers can use tarot cards to help them plan, plot, and outline a story before they write it. But what if you're a discovery writer or a pantser or whatever you want to call it? What if the idea of outlining and planning and plotting and obsessing about a story just sort of takes out all the fun of actually writing it? Or it even seems impossible based on the process that you use to write? Then this video is for you. There's certain challenges for writing this way, and your tarot cards can help you address all of those challenges to make your writing more interesting, more fun, and just more creative. I'm Angie from The Simple Tarot, and The Simple Tarot is all about helping you learn how to read the tarot cards so that you can ultimately use them in your life, whether that's using them for self-care and personal development, having fun, doing a little bit of DIY therapy, or using them in your creativity. In addition, I write fiction under a secret pen name that I will not share with you for basically marketing reasons, but I plot out my stories in obsessive detail, and this video is not for me. The idea of sitting down at that blank page without knowing exactly what I'm going to write it sounds like so anxiety inducing for me. But this is important. Every single writer is different, and every single person's process is different, and it's good. It's fantastic. So I just happen to be way on the one side of the discovery writer continuum. I'm like way over here. And I know there's discovery writers who just like sit down at the page and just write, and everything works out perfectly. But most people are going to be somewhere in the middle. And honestly, no matter where you naturally fall on that continuum between plotter and discovery writer, every project you approach, every story, every book, whatever you do, every time you do this, it's going to be a little bit different. Just because you don't want to sit down and outline your story before you get started, or because of your process you can't, that does not make you a bad writer. And it does not even hinder your ability to make money with your stories if that's what you want to do. There is like this, idea, especially in the self-published author community, that you need to be insanely prolific. You need to publish fast. And that the best way to do that is by plotting and planning things out in detail. Now, I'm not going to argue that having a big backlist and a back catalog of books is going to help you make money, because obviously that does. But you don't need to be like a hugely prolific and fast publisher to make money. I know people who publish just one story a year and who are making very good money. Also, I know plenty of people who are discovery writers and who write books faster than I do. I'm actually, even though I outline and plan everything, I'm actually kind of a slow writer. And part of that is because I outline and plan everything. So it is not just that you need to plan and outline everything as the fastest way and the most efficient way to write books. If it's part of your process and that makes you faster and efficient, do it. But if it's actually faster and more efficient for you to be a discovery writer, even if you end up throwing out 20% of those words that you write during the first draft stage, that's your process. And that is the most efficient thing and most effective thing that you can be doing. So even though I don't understand you people who go out there and discovery write and face that terrifying blank page all the time, there are some serious benefits to not planning and plotting things out. So what are they? It tends to be more efficient and take less time for some people. And now, again, like I said, this goes against common wisdom, which says that plotting is always faster and planning is more efficient. Well, and for some people, plotting and planning is more efficient and faster, but that doesn't mean it's more efficient and faster for you. When you discovery write your first draft, you're able to see the structure, the subplots, the character arcs, and the plot holes clearly. And you see these when the first draft is done, you see them in story form, not in outline form. So they're a little more complete. You're getting the whole picture instead of just sort of the frame and the structure of it. And that really helps you take an idea and revise your story in a way that's sort of more complete than if you were doing the revisions in the outline. Also, when you do this discovery writing, the writing itself feels extremely creative and challenging, which a lot of people love because you're making the story decisions at the same time that you're writing the dialogue and the settings and the descriptions and the characters and everything else. You're juggling a lot of balls in the air at the same time, and some people just really thrive on that type of challenge. And for some writers and from some stories, it's really easy to sort of hold it all in your head, the completeness of the story. It's easier to just write it when it's sitting from your head and then going straight to the paper. This is especially true when you're telling pretty simple stories, or when you have a lot of writing experience, or if you're writing in a genre that you are extremely familiar with. Additionally, and finally, for some people, especially who really love that sort of wordplay and creative adventures and the writing of that first draft, discovery writing comes naturally and it's just fun. And you should always, always do what's fun for you. Always. Of course, there's some, for every benefit, there's drawbacks as well. These drawbacks should not chase you away from being a discovery writer if that's what you find fun and are naturally drawn to, but you should be aware of them. For some writers, discovery writing means throwing out a lot of words. You'll have fun writing the first draft, but during that first draft, you're sort of trying to figure out where your story is going and what it is. And so once you get to the revision stage, you're going to realize that there's just tangents in some directions and plots that are unnecessary and scenes that just do not serve your theme or the character arc. So boom, into the trash can they all go. Disappeared and wasted effort. Okay, it feels like wasted effort, but these like rabbit holes you dive down, they're part of your process and they're necessary. So don't feel bad about it. If your process means you just end up throwing out those words, that's just your process. There's nothing wrong about it. You learned so much about the story in the process of writing those words. So even if they're not usable in the story, they helped you create that story. Another drawback is that for inexperienced writers, especially people who don't really strongly understand story structure, it can be hard to sort of rescue a story once it's written and in first draft form. A lot of newbie writers create this first draft and then they think that that's it, and that maybe they might make some editing changes to it, but they don't really spend a lot of time in revision. And revision, especially for a discovery writer, is really where the things that's the majority of the things that are sort of working in a story. That's where they happen. So maybe you told the story in the wrong POV and you have to go back and change the whole thing. Or maybe you had the wrong character as your lead protagonist and you go back, and from the entire first draft, you're like, ugh, so much to change. But rewriting the whole thing over is sometimes the only way to solve it. And that's just a lot of time and work. So just be aware that until you have a really strong intuitive sense of story structure, you're going to be spending the majority of your time in revisions. Probably, at least equal time in revisions as you do in writing that first draft. Another drawback is that in the writer community, especially among people who are looking to make a full-time income by being a self-published author, there's this huge bias against being a discovery writer. Some reason, the vibe there is like the only way to make money is by being a plotter and being like super planning and efficient before you start writing the story. And that means a lot of the advice out there in that self-published author craft community is not going to apply to you as a discovery writer. And so you're not going to get a lot of the support you need from that community for your process. Just know that there are definitely discovery writers who make a full-time living from their books, and you can be one too, if that's your goal. When you find your discovery writing people in that community, you're going to find a tribe of people who can support you in your process. It's just like the community overall has like this vibe that your way is wrong. Just want to tell you, it is not wrong. It is your process, but it's just a smaller percentage of the vocal voices that are out there. And another drawback is for some people, writing is the absolute worst part about being a writer. And you think I'm kind of joking, but I'm totally not. I am one of these people. I am a writer. It's my full-time living and income. Basically, everything I create with the Simple Tarot revolves around words. I spend the majority of my time writing, in addition to writing the fiction. I hate writing first drafts. Like, I detest it so much that I have basically removed the first draft process, that writing stage of the sort of writing process. I've removed it completely from how I write books. So being a discovery writer means that you spend a lot of time in that first draft stage. You also spend a lot of time in revisions, but first draft is really the focus of where all the magic happens. And if you're like me and you're a writer who just hates that first draft writing, you're not going to like being a discovery writer. Now, like I said, it is not an either or thing. It's sort of a continuum. So while some people, like myself, I'm at one extreme side, I'm sure there's other extreme discovery writers. Most writers are somewhere in the middle, and you move a little bit for every project. So as one of those like middle path writers, you might get like a rough outline of your story done, or you might know only the major plot points, like, your beginning, the midpoint, the end, and then the pillar plot points that happen in the transitions between the acts. If you just have those 5 bits of information, that might be enough for you to get started discovery writing the rest of your story. So, or you might approach it like you discovery write from a blank page, the first maybe the first 20 to 30,000 words. Maybe, the first, quarter, act 1 of the book or so. And then you're creating a story outline once you get to know what that is. You might be throwing away those words or the majority of those words you created, but that discovery writing of that first chunk of the book told you what story you wanted to tell and who your characters were and how they're going to act. And from there, you have enough information that you can sort of start over from scratch and write the whole book. Okay, so there's no right or wrong way, and this is all fluid. It's going to change for you. Your process changes as you gain more experience. Everything is changeable. But for the rest of this video, I'm going to totally assume that you're 100% with me on team discovery writer, because that's what works for you. And so if you want to make your tarot cards part of your process of discovery writing and make the whole thing more fun and easy for you, let's get going. So the questions are, how exactly can you use your tarot cards as a discovery writer, and when in the process is the best time to use them? First, of course, there's no right way or wrong way to use the cards. There's only your way. And honestly, you can use them constantly in this process throughout every stage of the creative cycle and of your writing process. Writers always use tarot cards in sort of that idea collecting stage. Even before you know what project you're going to be working on, you're just always collecting ideas in your head. So this is going on constantly, whether we're working on a specific project or we're taking a little break after a major project is completed. But tarot is a fantastic tool for this idea collection and generation stage. So don't just use tarot cards. There's no reason why you need to stick within the tarot box, especially during this idea generation and brainstorming stage. I love to mix up my tarot cards with oracle cards or angel cards. There's decks of cards that are made specifically for writers that have writers prompts on them. And so you can easily just take your tarot deck and the other deck and shuffle them all together. Although it's a little tough because the size of the cards is usually different. So what I do is I'll lay out a tarot spread and then I'll lay out the other cards just around or on top of it. But however you mix it up together, they sort of bounce off of each other. If you write sci-fi, one of my favorite board game, tabletop card games, I guess, is Space Realms, and you can use those as just sort of like spaceship triggers along with your tarot cards to come up with characters and settings and world building. So much fun. You can use Cards Against Humanity, which is great for plot twists and comedies and just crazy scenarios. You can use maybe some sexy time naughty cards if you are into that for writing steamy romance. You can use, Magic the Gathering for fantasy. Just think of the genre or the things you're into and find a deck that sort of suits that, and then mix those in with your tarot cards. Also, there are literally thousands of decks of tarot cards out there, and I am certain you're going to be able to find a tarot deck that applies to your genre. So if you write steampunk, go get the steampunk tarot. If you really like cozy mysteries, especially the paranormal ones, why don't you get the witches tarot? You can always find a tarot deck that relates to your specific genre, and you're mashing these up with other decks of cards that are sort of related or semi-related. You're going to have so much fun brainstorming and collecting ideas. So as a writer, you're going to use this sort of brainstorming and idea collecting stage at any and every phase of your writing process. So you can use it when your well is completely dry and you don't have a single idea and you're trying to come up with something new. You use it when you're stuck in your story and you're trying to solve a specific problem, like you don't know what happens next or you don't know how your character would act in this situation. Throw down some cards and see what they say. You can also use it when you need to develop your characters, especially if you're telling stories that are based on a positive or negative character arc. You can look at their wound, their flaws, their goals, motivation, conflicts, needs, all of that. The tarot card's really great at personal mindset stuff, so it's really also very good at character mindset stuff. So when your character's got a limiting belief, like that flaw caused by the wounds, that's going to come out in your tarot cards. I've got some fun and specific ways you can use your tarot cards for brainstorming when you are stuck on a specific, problem or part of your story. And this will happen often during the first draft stage if you're a discovery writer. So when you're stuck on scene ideas, you just don't know what should happen next, or you don't know how to move the plot forward, pull 4 cards and use 1 card to brainstorm ideas on the big moment or the complication that happens in the scene, and then use the other 3 cards to come up and brainstorm ideas for how this complication makes things worse or harder for your protagonist. And this goes for everything I'm talking about, but you never need to have any of this set in stone. It's not like the cards are telling you what to do. They're just giving you many possibilities and ideas. Really, your brain is the one who's going to come up and make the decision. So you can pull these 4 cards as many times as you need to until you come up with something that sort of makes sense or just feels right for you. And just trust your intuition and your creative spidey sense when you're doing this. If you're having trouble with your characters, you can pull 5 cards for your antagonist and 5 cards for your protagonist, and then use 1 card each for their wound, their flaw, their external goal, their motivation, and then their internal need. And so how are these cards similar? How are they different? See if they make sense for the characters that you've already come up with. Does anything need to be moved around? Like I said, mindset work with tarot individually on humans is fantastic. So it also is really useful when you're doing it for our fictional human friends. I know one of the problems that discovery writers have very often is the middle starts to sag in your story, especially when you're doing that first draft. You just don't have a lot of great ideas and you don't know where your story is going, and it's sort of sagging and boring and it's not exciting like you're hoping. So one way, if you're stuck during that drudging middle of your story, is to brainstorm using what you already know. So pull out 10 cards and come up with 10 of the absolute worst things that could happen to your protagonist and lay those cards out. And then pull 1 more card and use it to deepen each of those cards. So how could you basically have 10 different ideas and then 1 card that makes each of those 10 things deeper, worse, or harder? So how could you make those 10 things even worse for your protagonist? And that's the whole point, right? We want to make these fictional people's lives absolutely miserable. Now, those are just a few of the questions you can ask, and I know you're smart, so I bet you're going to be able to come up with tons more ways to use your cards to solve those problems. I highly suggest you watch this Tarot for Plotters video that's going to come up right here for some additional ideas that you can use for brainstorming and directing, especially in that revision stage of the process. So I know you're not a plotter, but that video is going to have a few key tips that really benefit you as a discovery writer. And there really isn't this planner-plotter divide anyway. It's just artificial rules about something that is so individual and fluid. So all we're trying to do here is create awesome stories and then share them with readers. And of course, tarot cards for whoever and everyone, they're just awesome tools to help make that process easier and better. So it's not about using your cards for plotting. It's not about using your cards for pantsing or even idea gathering. You can just use your tarot cards for guidance on your writing process and on living your best creative life. So if you are interested in learning more about using your cards for creativity, whether that's on a specific project, on your process as a whole, or even more so on living a creative life, subscribe to this channel right now, because this is maybe the 4th video in the Tarot for Writers series, and I've got a whole bunch more planned, and I don't want to see you miss them out. But until then, seriously, I'll check you out here where I'm more at home.